Chevrolet Caprice First Generation, 1966 to 1970. Caprice gained series status for the 1966 model year and was positioned as the top-line full-size Chevrolet. It included a 4-door hardtop, 6 or 9-passenger station wagon, and a 2-door hardtop with a squared-off formal roofline in contrast to the Impala SS Sport Coupe's fastback roof styling. All 4 Caprice models were marketed as Caprice Custom. The Caprice Custom Estate, a new station wagon model with simulated wood grain exterior trim, was the first Chevrolet with such a design since its real woody wagon was offered in 1954. All wagons included an all-vinyl upholstered 2-row bench seat interior with an optional third rear-facing seat for 2. The 283 cubic inches, 4.6 liters, V8 engine was standard for Caprice models with the 325 horsepower, 242 kilowatts 396 cubic inches, 6.5 liters, turbojet V8 optional. It was possible to have regular production option, RPO, L72, a 425 horsepower big block V8 with solid lifters, special camshaft and carburetor, and 11-to-1 compression. An automatic transmission, power steering, white sidewall tires, and a vinyl top, on the hardtops, were extra cost options, but most were built with them. Additionally, air conditioning, power windows, cruise master speed control, power seats, an automatic headlight dimmer, 1965 only, and stereo radios were available. The standard transmission was a Synchro-Mesh 3-speed manual, mounted on the steering column. This transmission remained standard until the spring of 1971, when the turbo-hydromatic automatic became standard. The 1966 Caprice featured a revised grille and front bumper, and new rectangular taillights which replaced the Chevrolet traditional triple-round taillights used on Impalas since 1958, with the exception of the 1959 model. Lenses and silver trim on Caprices differed slightly from the other full-sized models. Sedans and coupe models included luxurious cloth and vinyl bench seats with a folding center armrest in the rear seat. Optional on both was a strato bench seat which combined bucket-style seat backs and a center armrest with a bench cushion for 6-passenger seating. Caprices had unique standard wheel covers, although some of the optional wheels and wheel covers on full-sized models were optional. New options included the Comfort-Tron air conditioning system where the driver could set a constant year-round temperature. A telescopic steering wheel option could be adjusted vertically in 6 positions, as well as be telescoped further out from the steering column. Coupes could also be ordered with an all-vinyl interior featuring strato bucket seats and center console with floor shifter, storage compartment, courtesy lighting, and full instrumentation at the front end of the console that was integrated with a lower instrument panel. The 1967 Caprice received a restyling with more rounded body lines and revised grilles and taillights, optional front fender corner lamps which illuminated with the headlamps, as well as a revised instrument panel with round instruments and a new steering wheel. Taillamp lenses were all red as the backup lamps were relocated into the rear bumper, unlike in the lesser full-size models that had their backup lamps in the center of the tail lamps. A dual master brake cylinder was now included, while front disc brakes were optional. Other new options included a stereo 8-track tape player, power door locks, and a fiber optic exterior light monitoring system. The same seating selections continued as before with revisions to trim patterns plus the new addition of all-vinyl upholstery as a no-cost option for conventional and strato bench seats in sedans and coupes. Engines and transmission offerings were carried over from the previous year. The exception was the optional 425 horsepower, 317 kilowatts 427 cubic inches, 7.0 liters, turbojet V8 was no longer listed, leaving the 385 horsepower, 287 kilowatts, 427 as the top engine. The 3-speed turbo-hydromatic transmission that previously only available with a 396 cubic inches, 6.5 liters, and 427 cubic inches, 7.0 liters, V8S was now optional with the 275 horsepower, 205 kilowatts 327 cubic inches, 5.4 liters, turbo-fire V8. As with all 1967 cars sold in the US, Caprices featured occupant protection safety features that included an energy-absorbing steering column, soft or recessed interior control knobs, and front outboard shoulder belt anchors. The 100 millionth GM car was a light blue metallic 1967 Caprice Coupe. 6. It was assembled on April 21, 1967 at the Janesville, Wisconsin plant. It was actually the 100 millionth GM car built in the United States. Production including Canadian plants had actually passed the 100 million mark in March 1966, with an Oldsmobile Toronado being the car in question. The 1968 Caprice received a minor facelift that included a new grille with taillights set into the bumper and optional hidden headlamps. Caprice Coupes now came standard with a new Astro ventilation system, which included extra vents in the dash, and the removal of vent, wing, windows. Side marker lamps became standard on all US cars, and the Caprice carried over the optional white corner marker lamps at the forward edge of the fenders in addition to the amber parking lamps which were illuminated with the headlights. All 1968 Chevrolets got front side marker lamps on the fender. Cars with an optional engine were identified with its cubic inch displacement listed on half the bezel. The lamp itself occupied the other half. The fiber optics monitoring system was offered again as an option. The Caprice Coupe got serious competition when Chevrolet offered the car's formal roofline in the Impala series as well. The Impala Custom Coupe became the best-selling model in the line. The L72 427 cubic inches, 7.0 liters 425 horsepower, 320 kilowatts, turbojet V8 returned to the option list after a one-year hiatus. A new 307 cubic inches, 5.0 liters, turbo-fire V8 rated at 200 horsepower, 150 kilowatts, replaced the 195 horsepower, 145 kilowatts 283 cubic inches, 4.6 liters, small block as the standard engine. Inside, the instrument panel was revised with a return to the horizontal sweep speedometer and a revised 3-spoke steering wheel. An optional instrument cluster had a narrow speedometer within its opening and flanking it with engine-turned instruments in the place of warning lamps. The fuel gauge, placed next to the speedometer within its own pod in the base models, was moved to its new place next to the speedometer. A tachometer took the place of the fuel gauge in the large opening left by the fuel gauge. The 1969 Caprice and other full-sized Chevrolets were restyled with new body lines and front bumpers that wrapped around the grille, again with optional concealed headlamps, for which washers could be added as a new one-year-only option, along with ventless front windows on all models. The 119-inch, 3,023 mm, wheelbase, inner body shell and framework were carried over from the 1965 model. The station wagon was renamed the Kingswood Estate and continued to use exterior wood grain trim along with the interior trim of the Caprice sedans and coupes. Front seat headrests were now standard equipment to meet federal safety standards, and the ignition switch moved from the dashboard to the steering column and also locked the steering wheel when the key was removed. This was part of a federal mandate for the 1970 models, but introduced a year earlier on all General Motors cars except the Corvair. The 1969 Caprice also offered a new GM-designed variable ratio power steering unit as optional equipment along with a Selden-mortared liquid tire chain option, which was a vacuum-activated button that would spray ice melt on the rear tires. UPC option code is V75. The standard engine was enlarged to a 235 horsepower, 175 kilowatts 327 cubic inches, 5.4 liters, V8 with optional engine choices including a new 350 cubic inches, 5.7 liters, turbo-fire V8 and 255 or 300 horsepower, 220 kilowatts, versions, a 265 horsepower, 198 kilowatts 396 cubic inches, 6.5 liters, cubic inch turbojet V8, as well as a 427 cubic inches, 7.0 liters, cubic inch turbojet V8s rated at 335 horsepower, 250 kilowatts, or 390 horsepower, 291 kilowatts. All V8 engines were now available with a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic transmission for the first time, though the 2-speed Powerglide was still offered with the 327 and 350 V8s. The 1970 Caprice received a minor facelift featuring a more conventional under-the-grille bumper replacing the wraparound unit used in 1969, along with new triple vertical taillamps in the rear bumper. Power front disc brakes and fiberglass felted tires on 15-inch, 380mm, wheels were made standard equipment along with a 250 horsepower, 186 kilowatts, 350 cubic inch turbo-fire V8. Optional V8s included a 300 horsepower, 224 kilowatts, 350 and a new 265 horsepower, 198 kilowatts 400 cubic inches, 6.6 liters, turbo-fire V8. The top engine was a new 454 cubic inches, 7.4 liters, turbojet V8 offered in 345 horsepower, 257 kilowatts, or 390 horsepower, 291 kilowatts, versions. Both the 250 and 265 horsepower, 198 kilowatts, turbo-fire engines were designed to use regular gasoline, while the 300 horsepower, 220 kilowatts, 350 turbo-fire and both 454 turbojet engines required premium fuel. A 3-speed manual transmission with column shift was standard equipment as in previous years, but the floor-mounted 4-speed manual with Hurst shifter was dropped from the option list for 1970, as were the Strato bucket seats and center console previously offered on coupes. Automatic transmission options included the 2-speed Powerglide on 350 V8s and turbo-hydromatic with all engines.